So this is our latest model robot. Built to work in the cold vastness of deep space. If it doesn't work, maybe I'll turn it into a tuna fryer. Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here, and we're kicking off Cobra Convergence 8 on our channel by showing off a new type of Lego creation. As you can guess here, I have built a little figure. This is a Battle Armored Android Trooper, or BAAT, as it's commonly known. But of course, I also built the sign that's behind him. It is the logo for Cobra. And this was all done on a 48 by 48 base plate and several little plates that are underneath the red portion and an unfathomable amount of tiles. This was indeed a fair amount of work, as I spent probably about 3 to 4 hours designing it, and maybe at least 2 hours putting it together. So it did take a fair amount of work, but I do like it, and it does make a nice backdrop for our Convergence this year. And of course, before we get too far into the Convergence, we do need to have a slightly serious note here on it. One of the main organizers of the Cobra Convergence series, HCC788, has announced earlier this year his intentions to retire from doing G.I. Joe reviews on YouTube. One of the other earlier backers of the Convergence, Half the Battle Timmer, suggested that all of us pay tribute to our friend as he moves on into the next phase of his life. And I definitely want to say that Brian, real identity behind HCC788, is a good friend. I had the fortune to meet him in person last year at Joe Fest, although I had talked to him online a few times prior, as basically I was inspired to do my channel by watching a lot of his videos for G.I. Joe. Although I went with the route with the Transformers, mostly because I had Transformer toys as a kid. I never did have G.I. Joe toys, but I was an ardent watcher of the original cartoon. And for the time while HCC788 was doing a weekly live stream, I was a frequent participant in it and made a lot of new friends through the varied discussions that we had. It was always nice on those Tuesday evenings for him to notice that I was on there, and I'll always say that it was glad to have me along. And with me being an outsider to most of the community, that made me feel welcome. So that is one thing that I will well and truly miss, and I do hope that Hoodie and I will stay in touch with each other. So, Brian, I wish you the best. I hope I get to say this to you as well in person. Alright, anyways, now let's get on with the talk of our figure here. The original version of the Cobra BAAT, nice that I pull him apart here, was released back in 1993. He was part of the Star Brigade line, which was a series of space-themed G.I. Joes. The idea behind Star Brigade, in Hasbro's sense, was that they had heard rumors that Kenner was going to be bringing back the Star Wars toy line that made them such great success. So they wanted to get something out before Hasbro could get Star Wars out. And while technically they did, the thing of it was, the Star Wars toys didn't surface until 4 years later in 1997, when the Power of the Force collection would be put out to coincide with the release of the Special Edition trilogy. And unfortunately for a lot of people, the heavy science fiction induced bit of Star Brigade kind of signaled the death keel for what G.I. Joe was. I mean, they had always been somewhat outlandish on some things, but apparently this point was the end of it for many. Now, the BAAT here, he was in a special set of it known as Armor Tech, which meant he was a larger figure. They did a handful of figures that were wearing some sort of fancy spacesuits, so they were bulkier figures, and likely sold at a higher price point. They had restricted articulation, and they all had a rocket launcher of some sort. For our friend here, his was one that could be attached to his arm. Many of the others, the left arm was replaced with a rocket launcher. And of course, the Battle Armored Android Trooper is basically an evolution of this guy. This is a Battle Android Trooper, or BAAT, with one A instead of two like the other one. And of course, this is a Creon version, one that Hasbro officially released. The Cobra forces did like to create these troopers. They were very popular with Cobra Commander, mainly due to the fact that they had less things to deal with them. Battle Android Troopers did not shirk their duty, complain about the chow, or question the orders of their commander. So Cobra Commander really loved using them. It gave him an army of troops that were totally loyal to him. The biggest downside was that the Battle Android Troopers were not very intelligent robots, especially in their targeting systems. The targeting setup was very poor in them, and they tended to fire at anything that moved, be it friends, foes, or even wild animals. A favorite tactic of Cobra Command was to unleash bats to help cover retreats, which meant that the Battle Android Troopers were now marching through retreating soldiers of their own, and they would have a tendency to shoot them as they're retreating. Well, so they were never liked by the rank and file, but I guess when you're a part of an international terrorist group, your opinion really doesn't matter. Throughout the line, they would make new versions of bats, and they would claim that they were an upgrade. And while they did get upgrades in a lot of systems and such, their targeting and intelligence would continue to be a problem. And right here, since I don't have the regular Battle Android Armored Trooper to stand next to him, so you really don't know the sense of scale, but you can see it here with how he compares to a minifigure. And you can see he's slightly about twice the height. So that puts him probably relatively close to the right scale, maybe a little short. The idea for this figure came to me from seeing an article on a UK Lego website where somebody had decided that they didn't like the way the figures for the Star Wars Legos looked. They felt that the helmets and their weapons were relatively out of scale with the figures. So they decided to build these things out of various plates and some bricks. And then you got yourself a figure. So I decided to copy that and I made my own. And I think it turned out pretty good. Let me remove the rocket launcher. It's easier to take the hand off. Get it off of him. Now, of course, mine has about the same articulation as the toy he's emulating. The head can turn from the sides. The arm can be rotated at the shoulder. And stick the arm out about so far. That's something the original toy couldn't do. He can bend at the elbow. You can spread his legs apart about so far. It's probably less than on the regular toy, but that's pretty well fine for this guy, especially being made out of Lego parts. And of course, he can bend at the knee. He can actually bend both ways at the knee. That looked really painful. Now, when this guy was released, he was released at a time when Hasbro was giving out a weapons tree with their figure, with the G.I. Joe figures. So they'd have a plastic tree that would be overloaded with weaponry. The problem with that was that he couldn't carry all of his weapons. So you tended to end up losing a lot of those weapons because you really didn't have a place to hold them. I sort of fixed that on this guy. So I gave him a back peg, I gave him a back clip here, and this little yellow piece here, that's meant to represent the knife that the action figure came with. And yes, it was in yellow. All of his guns were yellow, but I don't know of many custom places that make yellow guns, so I just decided to use a couple of regular guns. I mean, one in the one hand here. This one is a Lego Star Wars rifle. And then over here, I've got a model of I got an MP model submachine gun. Toy came with a submachine gun and a rifle as a couple of the weapons, so that kind of works. And some of you may notice on the left arm here, it's got some white, whereas it's not present over here. I originally had him with both, but there was really no room for the rocket launcher to attach. And I know there'd be some fans that would want the rocket launcher, so I felt I would build the rocket launcher. It's not quite as easy to put on, but all in all, I think it is a great representation of the toy. If we can get the arm back on. The helmet's a little loose on him. Of course, I'm using a Marvel style helmet. We'll just leave the launcher off because it wants to fight more than get back on. And in a lot of ways, he looks a little bit better without it. Alright, now we're going to have Larry come out here so that he can help promote the Convergence for the rest of the week. Hello, my peoples! We're not the only ones putting out G.I. Joe Cobra related content this week. Today we've got us, yay! But we're also sharing the day with Skinny Joe Fan. Tomorrow on the 8th, we have Audible Interlude and Snuva's Corner Cafe. On Tuesday, the 9th, we have McDowell and What's on Joe Mind. On Wednesday, the 10th, we have Peg Warmers and Order of Battle. On Thursday, the 11th, we have The Savage Land and Talking Joe. Friday the 12th, Action Robot Punch and The Full Force will be doing their thing. And on the 13th, we have Inutabi, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Mega J Retro. All of these fine folks, will be putting content on YouTube or podcasts. So if you're a fan of G.I. Joe, and especially Cobra, please check them out. Thank you, Larry. And that's our review of a Lego-built BAAT. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Please do remember that if you love the content we feature on this channel, I would appreciate a like, a share, and a comment. And please subscribe if you haven't done so already so you won't miss any of our Lego Cobra content. This is Sparkster1701 saying, Cobra!